All right, I'd like to call this Ways and Means Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Fox.
Here.
Radke. Here. Krieger.
Yes.
Gick.
Here.
Coonan.
Here.
Johnson.
Yes.
Herrick.
Here.
Warren present.
Okay. Changes to the agenda. I do have a couple. We're removing item A2, the Community Health Center presentation. Removing item F3, the animal services fencing, and removing item J7, the policy for personal devices. Are there any other additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
We have this agenda. This edition.
Oh, and we're adding, I'm sorry, as part of, thank you, Dan, as part of item J5, this memo, the endpoint detection response software of the original agreement. We can add it to that, correct? Or does it need to be its own thing?
No, if everybody agrees, we do.
It needs to be its own because they're asking for two separate things.
Okay, so then we're going to add item J8, the endpoint software of the original agreement. Okay,
Point of order, Madam Chair.
yeah,
Needs a vote of 4 commissioners in order to approve the light ad for consideration.
okay. Is there a motion to add?
So moved.
Is there support? Is there any other discussion about, or questions about why this is being added? Comments or concerns? Okay, roll call, please.
Radke.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Gick.
Yes.
Coonan.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Herrick.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Motion.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, then, is there a motion for approval of the agenda as
So moved.
modified?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes of 12/7 of 2021?
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to item 6, public input. For those wishing to address the commission, please go to the podium, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. I think, could you sign in, please? Do you have a pad there? Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Beaver Township. My name is Elizabeth Kornacki, and I'm here first and foremost. It's all about animal services, my comments, and I'd like to begin by saying how wonderful they are and how great service time and time again, from the officers helping me with TNR to the cats that I've taken in there. I know all the staff there, and they're very wonderful people. My concern that I'd like to raise is your mission of rehoming the animals. After I turned in some animals, looking for them on the site, on the website, couldn't find them. And there is a gap there that I'm trying to be a part of the solution of, and that is to take photos to get posted so that everybody knows, there's like I don't know, I was told 80 cats. So I've begun that process as a volunteer and going to be working with the staff there. And I think that gap exists, in my opinion, is for lack of staffing. If you've ever walked in there, there's 20 things going on at once. People coming in with animals, reports of, loose animals, all sorts of things. Joe and Becky work so hard there, and it's only 1.5 people to deal with all that and deal with rehoming these animals. They're counting on volunteers. But I would like to suggest that there needs to be additional administrative staffing if you're to reach your mission of humane rehoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, then we will move on to item 7, Petitions and Communications. Presentation from the NAACP. The floor is yours.
Okay, can everyone hear me clearly? Okay. I'm going to try to multitask here by reading off the script and working the mouse over here, so bear with me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the esteemed commission and others here. My name is Daryl Newton from the NAACP of Bay City. I am the current president. I'm not a great public speaker, but I consider myself a great public servant, and I think that's most important. I am here to present to you our plan for the American Rescue Plan and the COVID relief. It is an initiative to bolster an active and equitable community recovery plan, particularly for communities of color impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and its associated factors. I have up on the screen now what the mission of the NAACP is, and I know how many of you in here are aware of what our organization does, just by a show of hands. Okay, good. So I won't belabor you with going through some of these issues. How many of you have ever attended an NAACP meeting or event, by a show of hands? So it looks like we have some work to do, and that's okay. That's okay. All right. The NAACP strategic plan and game changers for the 21st century, I need to share this with you because for more than a century, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has worked to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all people and to eliminate race-based discrimination inspired by the force and commitment of the call of 1909 when we were actually chartered and came into existence. In the fall of 2011, we launched a process to develop a strategic direction and plan, creating a powerful vision for the future and setting organizational goals that will focus its work on the 21st century. And that goes across the board from national, state, and local levels. And we're basing our priorities on 6 basic game changers, as we call it: economic sustainability, which I'll go here. If you have the proposal, this is on page 3. Education, which we're big on, that's one of our biggest priorities, going to page 4. You can't see. Please. Health, which is on page 4. Health, public safety, and criminal justice, which I don't really need to get into that discussion, and that's just it's one of our important initiatives as well. Voting rights, political representation, and expanding youth and young adult engagement, because our youth is our future, and it's very important that we fix the problem there and cultivate and move forward. Okay. Page 5. Bear with me just for a second here. It's not allowing me to go back where I need to be. Would you be able to assist Nick on this, page 6?
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
We all have a.
Oh, great.
So
Oh,
you don't need to
fantastic.
do this for us.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to go to page 6 here. There are three principles that should guide state and local policymakers in these equitable and equity efforts that we're targeting right now. Three that we find very important as well. That's target, advance, and strengthen. And I want to say those three words again. That's target, advance, and strengthen. We want to target aid to the most in need due to the COVID-19 and subsequent economic crises. Advance anti-racist and equitable policies, both on the short and the long term, to dismantle persistent racial, ethnic, gender, and economic inequalities, because we see it every day. And whether we want to acknowledge it, it's ugly, but there needs to be some initiative put into that effect to bring harmony to the community. And it's all about the community. And the reason why we have these three initiatives, and the reason for the support, which on page 6 you'll see the Initiative Statistical Foundation, I took some liberty to really go into and look into what would be best for the community, even though some didn't. Well, we have all this money and this is what we need to do with it, but you need to have a foundation and a driving force too. So according to Sanders, Leachman, and Williams, COVID-19's effects have underscored the ways of our nation's history of racism, bias, and discrimination, and they're embedded in our health, social, and economic systems. There's just no way around it. It's been there. As hard as we work, as hard as we try to do, we've made progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done there. And I'll read that again for you. COVID-19's effects have underscored the ways our nation's history of racism, bias, and discrimination are embedded in our health, social, and economic systems. Now, these individuals actually prepared a study on a federal level and a state level to see where this money would be best utilized as it's being distributed down to the state level and eventually to our local municipalities. And they're saying that Black, Indigenous, and Latinx people are experiencing higher rates of infection, hospitalization, and death just because of the effects of this pandemic. And not only that, which is still on page 6 here, they're the most communities that have jobs in these places like hospitals and first responders and things of that nature. So that lends to that distress as well, for the lack of terms. So at the bottom it says here, they're the hardest hit, of course, and shaping these outcomes and structural barriers like wealth and income disparities, inadequate access to health care, racial discrimination being built into a health system and the labor market. We do have an opportunity to utilize this money to be transformational, which I think that's an important term to use, transformational. And so if you've ever had an opportunity to look at that, I'm going to go ahead to page 8, which states our local NAACP goals and priorities. Number one, we want to address and put to rest any community concerns in relation to the 2020 COVID-19 vaccines and effects of the pandemic and the economic fallout that is vital to communities of color, particularly in Bay City and Bay County. So when you see Bay City, if it doesn't say Bay County, we're going to also refer to it as Bay County. Secondly, provide the necessary outreach, which is important, and financial assistance and services so greatly needed in an underserved populace. And that goes across the board from African Americans to Latinos to Asians to Native Americans and the whole 9 yards. And lastly, partner with and invite local groups and organizations to engage in this effort so that everyone has the equitable stake in this recovery. We don't know how long it's going to last. Right now, we thought the pandemic was over at one time, and here we are with something else. But those same communities that I'm talking about right here, right now, were suffering prior to, during, and most likely are going to be afterwards. So it is our goal to make sure we try to do our best to utilize this money and get the best bang out of the buck to bring us all up and get them back into being a part of the community. Does that make sense? Okay. How the NAACP core COVID recovery initiatives will be implemented in our community, again, we're looking at economic sustainability. Right now, you have some folks, there are a lot of people involved in this initiative, but some, if they get a shut-off notice the day before, they go to United Way or some of these other places. That process is going to have some protocol and a little bureaucratic steps and stages that you have to go to. We can provide that immediate assistance. And a lot of our communities of color don't like to deal with that because sometimes they think it's intrusive. Or I go there and I have this immediate need and I get turned down, or I've been turned down 3, 4, 5, 6 times. They don't want to do it anymore. They have an idea that they're not going to get any help. So why even go through the effort to get turned down and to feel that way again, all over again? And you can imagine how that feels over time, particularly those disparate ones that are really down on their luck and see no window or no opportunity for that assistance. So again, in the economic sustainability aspect, we want to provide immediate cash, help close the income disparities in communities. I don't need to share with you the differences between income between people of colors, 10 times less than, that. I mean, it's staggering and it's overwhelming. We want to provide the necessary bridges to close those gaps, being part of the solution instead of the problem. We want to provide a level playing field so that everybody has an opportunity to recover in the best manner that we can in a 5-year period of time. Page 9. Again, you're going to hear me talk about education over and over and over because that's one of our priorities that we need and that we really put an effort to. In the areas of education here locally, we want to actively seek out families of the students that were impacted greater, obviously, when they were down and virtual and back and forth in this pandemic. We don't have to tell you what that's like being a child or a student, right? We want to support families in a variety of ways with vouchers for clothing because, again, they're too proud to say, well, I went to the United Way or I went here and I got to ask all these questions or they didn't give me this or I didn't need that. But rest assured, we are going to look into it. We're going to have guidelines for that as well. It's not like we're just giving money away. I mean, we know that there's an obvious need out there. We've been through it before, and it's something that we already are doing. So in the form of vouchers, then they can take those things to where they need it, and get it, whether it be a Myers or whatever, for school clothing and things of that nature. And lastly, we really want to support families in other means necessary to assure that their students are getting the education and getting to school or even getting a decent breakfast and all. So it is vital and it is important. Going in on healthcare recovery. We want to help defray associated healthcare costs. We want to provide clinics and public forums because if you're familiar with the statistics, African Americans alone are probably last in health and wellness, only because in many cases they wait till they're ill to go to the doctor. Even at this point in time right now, with this pandemic, there has been a lot of hesitancy because of that. Well, I don't feel any symptoms, or I remember the Tuskegee project, or the issues with Henrietta Lacks. I don't trust what the government or any of these big pharma facilities are doing. And that weighs heavy in their mind. And we've actually, since this pandemic started, worked with Joel Strauss and the healthcare, and we've done clinics out there, and it's still like pulling teeth. So there has to really be an effort there. We're not sure. Thank God the numbers are trending down, but there's still a lot of effort there because if you're familiar with long-term COVID effects and things of that nature, that's only going to make that issue greater for that community, whether it's Latina, the low income, or what have you. So we want to make sure that they have access to the health care for those long-term effects, because who knows what it's going to be right now, and to actually get vaccinated if need be, particularly the kids. Public safety and criminal justice, certainly we're all for the good of that, community engagement. We want to make sure that's better. Right now, there's a lot of work to be done there. So working closely with the Department of Public Safety is one of our initiatives. Initiate a collaboration with them, and just making sure we do community policing in a greater, different way. Just having a partnership. And then last here, local political representation during the recovery. When I say political representation, it's not political, because we're a nonpartisan organization, first and foremost, let me say this. But when you have cases that you see around for discrimination on just things like hair, simple hair, natural hair, does that kind of shock you a little bit, that people actually discriminate over just hair? There have been cases right now, there's actually legislature with the state to introduce a bill to prevent discrimination based off of hair. How would you imagine me coming in here and someone says, well, I don't like your hair because it's what it is, you know? And that's, you know, it's you can't fathom that. So those are the sort of things that we need to, we're going to be addressing, because it's real and it's visible. So when I say local political representation, there has to be some dollars to be put aside to help fight these causes just like that you may not have experienced, or you may never have to experience, and I hope you don't. So I have here critical statistical data going to page 11 and 12, but those speak for themselves. They do. So I'm going to go through and skip through to, if you will, page 16, the Bay County Statistical Census Data. Have any of you, I'm sure you have, studied the latest census data? There's a lot of information there, and sieving through it can be overwhelming. Just population figures here that I wanted to first two there's 2020 and 2021. Obviously, it's trending down. So we're trying to keep as many of our people in this wonderful community here and not have them either, for whatever reason, succumb or have to leave because of just the stresses and rigors of COVID and just the economy. So those first two numbers I just wanted to share. This is what we're basing a lot of our budget off of. Page 17, there are a lot of statistics, and these two here, if you've had a chance to look at it, I don't know why the census, when they dealt with race, have Hispanic left off of one graph and Hispanic on another. So that's why those two are there on page 17. And that just gives us an idea of who and what we need to focus our attention to. Page 18, graph at the bottom, you know, those in itself, schooling and all of that, again, it ties back into schooling. And then if you look at those figures there, that, you know, high school is fine, but, you know, some college, but there's a lot of work to be done in the realms of education. Page 19, and I'm going to try to skip through this as fast as I can here. The poverty levels, you know, if you look at that for the county, 15.8, that's 16% for, you know, the overall. And then the breakdowns of 15% for male and 16 for female. Any number in poverty, you have to be concerned with. And I would imagine these numbers are probably going to be a lot larger because not everyone actually took the census that needed to, but they're going to be a little. So that's what we want to make sure this initiative does, maybe bring an individual, family, or what have you, a little bit up out of that poverty level, and I believe we can do it. And again, less than, page 20, less than fifth grade education and things of that nature, 27%, that's pretty high. And again, that prompts our initiative to work with youth and education. So I'm just trying to make sure this kind of all ties in here. So page 22, and we're talking expanding community cultural, youth, and young adult engagement. Some of you may ask the question, well, what does community cultural, youth, and young adult engagement have to do? When I was growing up, and I'm spent most of my life here in Bay City and Bay County and have family out here as well. Being able to have options and getting out of your neighborhood and seeing things that made you feel good kind of changed your mind. It piqued your interest on a lot of things rather than, I'm not stereotyping, but being that person in your neighborhood or that corner person or doing the wrong things. When you have options and you can see other people doing things, it does pique your curiosity to go further. Now, I'm a graduate of Bay City Central. I had the opportunity in 11th grade, I think it was a teacher on physical science, Mr. Murphy. There was a opportunity to go to Michigan State University for a little science camp. That changed my whole life. That 1 week there piqued my interest in just wanting to, well, the experience itself being on campus. These are the kind of things that low-income communities of color, whether it be Native American, Latino, they need to have that. That one little thing changed my whole life and piqued my interest to just do better, and it allowed me to see other things around the country in my career, in my education. And we don't have enough time, we don't take enough time, and we don't make enough time to do those things for the youth. And that's when they go away. You know, we know about single-family households, we hear all of the negative things, but these are the initiatives that really can transform and change a child's life. Whether it's going to a museum, it might pique their interest in history or anything, just pique their interest to do better. And so seeing cultural things and getting involved with cultural things is good. I support the arts, I love the arts, and that's all a part of culture. And so that's something that I am personally going to take on, because the need for communities to engage and feel the need of inclusion and bonding and having something to rally behind is good. You know, it's like the fourth quarter. Here's the team. Hey, we've got to win this. Let's pull this together and let's do it. And again, number 2 on page 22. The need to feel equal and equitable, that brings you in. When you're seeing activities and things around you all year long that doesn't include you, or I don't see people in it that includes me, how would you feel about something like that? It's just like, well, the community doesn't care about me, or nobody cares about me. I have no interest in it. But, you know, if you bring something in that, you know, Native American and Indian dancing and music and arts and food and all of that thing that everyone can engage in, it does make a difference. Again, Juneteenth celebration. How many of you in here know what Juneteenth means? Okay, well, we have. So this would be an opportunity for us to start a long-standing community event other than 4th of July. That would be the equivalent of the African Americans' 4th of July. But it also brings an opportunity for everybody to engage and have fun, whether the music is country and western, a variety of that, but share and embrace each other's cultural differences. You'd be surprised at what that does for the community. Okay? So we're going to put a little bit of that funding into embracing the community with that feel good, and it does actually make a big difference. So you ask, well, how much is this going to cost the commission and the county, right? Again, page 24. We are asking for $1.6 million over a 5-year commitment. And there's a secondary and tertiary, but if we're going to do it right, the 5-year commitment is what we're asking for. And how did I base that number, or how did we base that number? Actually, it's modest compared to what the need is, but you have to start somewhere, and it's fair and it's equitable, and it's based basically off of the population of communities of color, which includes Native Americans, Latinos, mixed races and all, and it's still low. Given the numbers that we see for the county, is right at about, if I'm not mistaken, don't hold me to this number, right at about 15% with all of those included. So this is roughly at about 8%, which is half, you know, so that's still fair and equitable in our part, because this is the first time that we're taking on a venture this big, and we didn't want to seem like, well, this gentleman here is my treasurer, and he's very frugal with $1. So we're going to be, we're going to get the best bang out of this buck, believe it or not. So with that being said, that's on a 5-year commitment. And how those ARPA dollars will be allocated, again, over those six issues on page 25. Economic stability, into the education, healthcare recovery, public safety and criminal justice, the local political representation, and I have there in parentheses DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that promoting that in schools is a good thing. I don't know how you all feel about it, but having a diversity, equity administrator or someone to deal with race issues or discrimination or harassment on any level is good. So we want to press upon the county schools to act on that because, again, we see these issues of race and discrimination, even harassment, whether it be sexual or whatever, on a day-to-day basis. And somebody has to really do something about it. So that's one of our initiatives. And left the 7 open because you never know. I should have put question marks in there, but for whatever reason it is. And you see it says purposed, and that's not a typo. It is purpose because we are driven by purpose to do this. And this is on page 25. And just to kind of skim through this, after-school tutoring, I think that's very vital. Because we have so many students right now that are falling behind. Teachers can't do it all. So that's where we come in with our resources. You know, it's going to be a tough fight, but I think the trust element, the trust issue with us, particularly in the communities of color, would be better and more productive. That's just one of the things that I just wanted to point out. I'm going to go to page 26. Life and employment skills. All of these things are very important. Teaching a kid how to interview or teaching him where his passion could be for career and utilizing schooling to get him on that right track. You know, there has to be a tension there. You're not going to get all of this from your family or the home because sometimes there's that little bit of dysfunction there that you may come from a generation where schooling wasn't a priority. But we're going to make them feel good about driving to be their best, taking that chance, stepping out on faith to see what those results are going to be. And we have examples of people who have been in those situations with and have made it and can talk to that effect. So that in itself, I think, is worthy. Again, we have on page 27, stress management, dealing with mental health. We know what mental health is and the importance of addressing that. Page 28, cultural diversity celebrations. Again, what we would like to do is bring all of those communities of color, their culture together on maybe one weekend and share a dance, food, a celebration as we do, culminating into maybe a Juneteenth festival, whereas the whole community can engage and be a part of that and lift. And that makes that community feel as though now we're a part of the total, the collective whole. And I think when you look at it from a psychological standpoint, that's a part of healing and moving forward out of this pandemic. Diversity education, I can't stress that enough, folks. I mean, it is a part of it, of moving forward. And page 29, the bottom line, $256,000 is just based off of these. So now, if you multiply that over a 5-year period, again, my calculator in my head is not as accurate as some, that comes out to about a $1,300,000 over that 5-year. And you say, well, what about the extra? That extra money would be based on a contingent because we don't know how inflation or what some of these prices may go up or they may go down, but there always has to be a contingency, and that's where those dollars would go for, and we would utilize that again back into those 6 core areas that we have set as a priority. And with that being said, once again, the Bay City branch thanks you for your opportunity to be transformational. And that word I can't say enough to the Bay City and Bay County communities for those in need to help them rebound from this COVID pandemic and moving further. We all thank you for this opportunity. I know there may be some questions along the way, but I want to say we did put some considerable thought into this. We don't have all of the answers, but we want to be part of the solution instead of the problem. And we've been doing this for well over 100, well, on a national level, 113 years. Here locally, over 100 years. And so this would be transformational for us too, because it would give us the opportunity to really dig in and give back to the community that's given to us to do those things. Can you imagine just the impact that we would have or make on the communities of color here, and show our commitment to them? So are there any other questions? I thank you again for the opportunity to address the commission.
Mr. Krieger?
Thank you. So, thank you for the presentation.
It's my pleasure.
On a statewide, not so much county by county, but how has the buy-in been? And has Bay City committed to any kind of funding off there?
At this point, again, we're trying to, again, county and city together should be a collaboration like that, and they do have this presentation, and there has been, it's been well received. So given if we do get the funded amount from you and the funding from the county and the funding amount from the city, that brings us to that 15%, which is the fair and equitable amount that we've taken out of the total 20 million or so. Do you understand what that means? That would mean it would equal the percentage of the communities of color based off of populace in itself. And that is the fair and equitable way. If I am 15% of my total community, then 15% would be a good place to start on a budget. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mr.
So did I
Koenig?
answer your question? I don't have any commitment. They're talking maybe March at this particular point in time. Where in March, I don't know. Things keep getting moved forward, but again, we're in a wait and see mode. But
And then as
the
far
thing
as-
is, people out there in the communities are struggling, and it gets worse every day. So each day that we add to it, which I always say to them, makes their struggle a little harder. You know, one person may get put out of their apartment, or their mortgage might have lapsed in whatever financing they have, so they have to leave their home, or lose their car, or lose their job because, you know, just they can't get there.
So if we were to look down south, let's say the Detroit metro area, have they made commitments?
May I ask your name, Commissioner?
Sure, Krieger, Ernie.
All right, Mr. Krieger, I don't know. I know there has been, well, the Detroit branch is a lot larger on a state conference.
Correct.
They have direct contacts with the governor and things of that nature. I know there have been some grants, special grants over the years for voting and things of those types of initiatives.
Well, I'm just talking the ARPA funds.
But not to my knowledge right now in ARPA, but I'm sure that they have put in proposals similar to this, because for each major city where there is a branch, we're going to follow the same 6 core focal points, from healthcare to education and all. So be encouraged by that. We're all going to utilize that same tested and tried formula to uplift those communities. So when you have a concerted effort, everybody working, doing the same thing, you should get good results rather than someone doing this and someone doing that. I'm sure it's going to be based off the needs and the assessment of the communities. I have to add that as well, because every community is different, just like every person of color is different. We're all not a monolith. It's different, and different sometimes is good. It's always good. But I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't.
Thank you.
Mr.
I'm
Coonan?
focused on
Hold on,
basically what
Vaughn,
we're going to
Mr.
do for
Coonan
our
was first.
community here. That's my priority, and I hope you don't.
Mr. Newton,
yes.
we have more questions for you.
Oh.
Mr. Coonan?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Newton, I love the program. I love the fact that we're looking at helping those folks that are in need. And people of color, whether it's Black, Latino, Indigenous, or even poor white.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, poor people have no color.
Same problem.
So I like the education, the tutoring, giving these kids, because these kids have fallen behind even more so than most.
Exponential.
And in order to, we talked a little earlier, this is like generational economic development. If we give kids the opportunity to be successful, to get them an education, to help them through the times that they're having difficulty in school, whether it's grade school or what have you, we're doing something positive. And we're doing something positive for them as well. Now, you looked at after-school tutoring. I don't think the schools are going to do something like that, but how are we working with somebody that we can, do you have a place where you're going to educate or train these kids?
This is nothing new to us, Mr. Cooley. This is nothing new. We just didn't have the resources along the way to do it in a grander scale.
Yeah.
I mean, we have retired teachers in the area. We have resources, as I said, from other branches that we can pull in and utilize this. Starting in the communities of color, our churches, number one, basically been the milestone or the pillar of the community. It's a trusted area, it's a trusted resource. Whereas if I'm a child and I'm struggling in school, I'm not going to feel too comfortable about doing after-school programs or something with the same teacher that I may not have that drive or motivation or encouragement from. So we don't have all of the answers, but I know if we start in those communities with those individuals in the church and in those communities, even with the Native American or the Latino, they're more inclined to accept, and then you have more time for one-on-one and things of that nature, and pique the interest and see what that child's interests are. Whereas I give teachers a very high rating, but they don't have that time right now to put in on each individual student. You may have a student in there that has an IQ in one area that is, skyrocketing, but he's failing because that teacher can't take that time to find out what his interests are, what he really is, to get him to talk and just share those things. That's what we're planning to do. You'd be amazed at what you can pull out of a child when you show that attention and love and just time.
And then under the health and wellness, you got $2,000 a day, just to, and we've got a community center, and we've got a health department that we can put together a health and wellness program for those folks in need. So, and this is, you have a 5-year program. These dollars probably have to be spent in 3 years. I'm just saying. And if we were to give you some money, then you can tailor your program to start. I'm not sure. I support it. I support helping kids. And you got the program, and you're going to tailor it, but we have to have they have to review this and make sure that those dollars are being used to help kids.
Absolutely, and again, we'll have the checks and balances in place, because I know you have to be accountable for that, and we've always been accountable for the dollars. And again, trusted sources, starting in those communities, the Latino community, the Native American community, the Asian communities, and things of that nature. First, some of those communities we deal with, but we're going to have to build some trust and stuff in there too. So a lot of this is going to be here, there, but when there's a good start, we're hoping for a great finish.
And the poor, because the poor doesn't make any difference what color you are.
I couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah.
Poor African American is just as poor as a Caucasian person.
Sure.
And kindness and poor. No one wants to be poor, but if we can help them alleviate some of those items and barriers, that's the whole thing, and build bridges to getting them.
And this would be like a summer program.
Absolutely. And we've done this before. This is nothing with our churches here that we haven't. We just don't do this stuff for the applause. We do it for the cause. And again, sometimes the funding wasn't always there. But that's why when we put in here, we wanted to make sure we have enough to get us through those stages. And the more that see that the success, or the more that are engaging in these programs, the community comes in. They'll take part of that. It's trusted sources. And if you look at any psychological analysis, trust is number one in communities of color, trusted sources. And I can't put it any plainer. And we accept and welcome anyone and everyone. And we empathize and sympathize, and we know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Begich?
Yes.
Sort of focusing also on the health and wellness side. Been in the medical field for 45 years. We started in Saginaw with health and wellness, and that's when, GM, there were more jobs available. People had good health insurance. We were focused on preventive health, things like that. I think.
Thank you for your service.
And I just heard today about statistics about the rate of diabetes and the rate of strokes, and it's really not very comparable to the average population. It's just pretty high. So, and I think the wellness thing is good, and also the health fair. We used to run a lot of health fairs when I was up in Saginaw too, to get people interested.
And if you Google, I think we had a successful health fair we took part in with the Y. After the Y was open, I think MLive has it covered with just a whole host of health and wellness individuals and coming in. And we're planning on doing that on an ongoing basis, because the statistics that you were talking about in the African American, and I use that just because that's what I'm most familiar with right now, because I have an elderly mother that has every known disease. May she bless her heart, because she's my soldier. Diabetes, high blood pressure, sickle cell anemia full-blown, kidney survivor from cancer. And it's not because she did not take care of her health, it's just that she didn't have those wellness checks enough to where a lot of it would be caught in advance. And that's part of the problem in a lot of the communities of color. They only go to the doctor or the hospital when they're showing symptoms. And in many cases, with a lot of diseases out there, you don't know how bad it is until you go in and then it's too late. And then all of a sudden, well, grandma or mom or whatever died because A, B, and C, or they blame it on everything except good, consistent health and wellness checks. And I don't know why that is. It's, again, it could be a trust issue too. Going to these hospitals and not wanting to face the music of what their disease or whatever. But as long as it's manageable, and as long as they can catch it early, this is the things that we're promoting and trying to help them. Just a simple wellness check. Well, I don't have the money for that. I don't have the time for that. Well, we're going to make sure we get that to you, even if we have to have a mobile clinic come out to you or what have you. Things of that nature. It is vital and it is important, because I'd hate to see another individual succumb from something that could have been prevented if they would have just had that regular wellness checkup. And again, all of these communities are not a monolith, but this has been a big problem over the ages, which you're probably aware of.
By the way, it's been one of the more thorough presentations we've had.
Well,
and you're a pretty good public speaker, by the way.
Well, well, there's so much that and you only have so much time, but I wanted to press upon you our commitment. And if you could feel that passion that we have, and again, that word transformational, it gives us an opportunity to give back to those who have given to us over those years. We've been in this community since 1918, if a lot of you didn't know, in the Baker families and all of that, when lumber and shipping and all of that. But we've been silent partners. We've engaged. That's why I asked everyone who has attended an event or an invitation or anything, and that's work that we have to do. And I take that on my onus as well, because we need you. We want to work with you. We want to engage, because there's always strength and encouragement and success out of numbers. And whatever opinion you may have had about our organization, by me coming in and sharing and engaging with you, hopefully it gives you a better idea of what we do. We're a community. We're not just a black organization. We're an organization for everyone, people of color. That's why we've kept that old National Association for the Advancement of Color. Now they say color is one of those words, but color is also a hue. So and everybody has a hue of some sort. And so we are looking to be as fully funded as this presentation will allow you. And the numbers are obviously, we don't have a magic ball that says this is what we need to do, because we don't know. Coming out of this, 5-year plan. You never know what else is going to happen. But we're going to give our best effort, 110%, to bring those individuals up out of that, to make life a little better, if not a lot better. And I will leave you with this if there are...
Well, wait, not yet, because I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Okay, I do have one last question. So what is your plan to measure the impact of this program? How you know it's going to be successful and sustainable?
Well, that is a good question, and our group, we brought that up. First of all, any increases on any of those things, the numbers here locally, you're saying having a benchmark to start from. And that's difficult, and even measuring how we're going to use, the dollars, that's something that we really haven't put our fingertips on. But if one person, one is not enough, but one is more than we would have, goes and gets a wellness check, if those numbers are up, data-wise, going to hospital. If one student brings his E's up from E's to C, it's just, we're going to do some research on aggregate numbers working with the schools. But to be honest with you, that's a real toughie. That's a tough question. And hopefully by the next couple of months, we will put something in place to measure those results, working with some of our agencies around here, whether it be the Hospital of McLaren or whether it be the United Way. But we're going to substantiate these dollars in the best way possible on what they accomplish. So be encouraged by that and confident that we will do that. But that is a toughie. I anticipated that, but right now, with where we're at and what we're trying to see moving forward, it's a tough question. And I'll be honest, that's something that we're still working on right now.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Any other last questions before we let Mr. Newton go?
Well, I would
think
love
we're
to stay
good. Thank
around
you
if
so
I
much.
can for,
Sure.
I want to engage, so I'm glad to make this acquaintance, and thank you for this time. And please kind of keep in mind if we have any events, I need to know who I can send invitations to, because we welcome you. We want to have you get involved with us. We want to learn from you as much as you want to, maybe learn from us, and just foster a solid, cohesive community bond. And that in itself is nothing but good.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Motion received.
Support.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Next is the intergenerational care presentation. Are they here? Yes, there he is. Okay, good.
I do have, yes, sir. I do have a handout that I'll circulate. So this is a refreshed proposal based on a proposal that I did back on July 20th. My name is Rich Van Tall. I work at the BAYANET Intermediate School District. I'm a volunteer for the Montessori House of Bay City, the nonprofit organization that's actually would be the recipient of the dollars for this project. This is my contact information's on the cover sheet there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. So this is a community collaborative type of project to address some of the economic challenges around childcare in our community. So Bay County is considered a childcare desert, so we're unable to meet the demands of the workforce. A lot of the folks who want to go back to work are unable to go back to work because of the lack of accessible, affordable childcare. So as a community and economic development project, several partners have come together to put together this proposal, including New Hope Bay. The owners at New Hope Bay have been extremely generous. They helped us to renovate about 1,000 square foot of an outbuilding of theirs for the purposes of childcare on their campus. We opened that up back in March of 2020. It's licensed for 22 children. It's full and has a waiting list. We need more childcare in this community, and again, this is an attempt to be able to mitigate that. So New Hope Bay is the campus where we would place this expanded childcare facility. We would do an addition on top of the existing facility. Montessori House of Bay City would be the childcare provider. And I come at this from a community and economic development angle at the BAYANET ISD. I support school, community, and home partnerships in the community in my role there. And then volunteer in a number of different initiatives such as this. So not really much has changed since my presentation back in July, other than a couple things. One is Commissioner Johnson did reach back out to me saying he would like this proposal to be reformatted to conform with a number of different recommendations by the commissioners, and so I've reformatted the proposal to comply with that requirement. Moreover, we did get a grant through the Bay Area Community Foundation to work with Bay Future and the Chamber of Commerce to be able to replicate a child care capacity study that was done in Midland County several years ago to mitigate the same issues, to build out child care supply. So we have a $12,000 grant, and we're working with the Legacy Center for Student Success in Midland County to replicate that study for Bay County, so we can benchmark and evaluate our progress as we try to build out child care supply for the workforce here in Bay County. That project will be done in April, so we'll have a good baseline to quantify the problem. The problem does continue to exacerbate, however. We continue to learn that we're losing child care capacity, and more people who want to return to work are unable to return to work because of child care. So again, the project has stayed pretty much the same in terms of its focus. It's to develop this national model of intergenerational care. When I say an intergenerational care model, what I mean is we'll have elderly citizens as well as children on the same campus who can then interact with each other. Of course, we haven't been able to realize that vision for the past 2 years because of COVID, but we're hoping that post-COVID we'll be able to afford the children and the elderly on that campus to interact, to engage, and to stimulate learning opportunities by and between each other. That's really the concept, and we believe it has replicable capacity and interest, by the way, across the state and across the country. It's a model that was brought to us by the owner of New Hope Bay. He's from India, and his wife worked in a Montessori program. And when I brought it to his attention, he was super enthusiastic and on board to try to bring it to Michigan. So that's where we stand with the project today. It's still we costed it out at $300,000. That was with the project today. With inflation, I'm sure it's going to cost more, but we're working with community development financial institutions, First Children's Finance and IFF out of Detroit. So if the project does exceed the $300,000, we'd naturally have to borrow the rest through a CDFI.
Mr. Grunin?
Yeah, you mentioned, I like the program too. You mentioned accessible and affordable. How is it affordable? I mean, you just mentioned that word. Is affordable compared to what? So affordability really is contingent upon a number of different variables. The family household income is the #1 variable. So if families qualify for DHHS subsidy, they have to be at or below 185% of poverty. And so one of the affordability angles is helping the families with those costs, making sure they're eligible, doing the paperwork, ensuring they have pretty seamless access to the subsidy. Moreover, we have a new initiative in the state. We were hoping that the state of the state last week with Governor Whitmer was going to reference this, but you'll see a pretty big press release later this week on a project called Michigan TriShare. So we're trying to, concurrent with these types of child care supply building initiatives across the state, we're working with Michigan Child Care or Michigan TriShare to be able to work with employers to help subsidize some of the costs of child care. So we have multiple initiatives that we're hoping we can align the stars, but you'll hear more about Michigan TriShare, and you're going to hear more about efforts across the state and the country, for that matter, to build out child care supply. I am just trying to help coordinate this for the Great Lakes Bay region. And then with regard to affordability, the child care providers have received some ARPA dollars through the state in the form of stabilization grants. And so we're working with child care providers with their stabilization grants to help the families who attend those child care facilities to mitigate some of their expense, some of their out-of-pocket expense, if they don't qualify
for the subsidies.
Thank you.
Mr. Herrick?
Who would own this?
So it would be on the campus of New Hope Bay. New Hope Bay is the landlord. They would ultimately own the facility, but we have a long-term lease in perpetuity to be able to lease the facility for $1 a year in perpetuity. Ultimately, if it went out of business, say for example, if it was unsustainable, we would probably transition it to another child care provider who wanted to operate it.
How many additional children will you be able to accommodate?
We're licensed for 22. If we did a 1,200 square foot addition, again, it'd be contingent upon licensing, but we're hoping to double our capacity. So 44.
44?
Yeah, from 22 to 44. Again, some of that is contingent upon licensing and contingent upon the age of kids that we serve. So for preschool age children, you can serve like 16 to 18 children in a classroom. For infants and toddlers, and we do hope to expand this to infants and toddlers, you can only serve a maximum of 8 children in those classrooms. So we would probably aim for about a room with 16 and a room for about 8, so expand it to about 22 to 24, contingent upon licensing.
Mr. Bikic?
Yeah, I think this has sort of been done, I think the sewer Peg Watson over on Broadway in Fremont, they've had an intergenerational for quite a while now, with the daycare for adults or respite care, and then children also. I don't know how much, you probably can't interact a lot now.
Peggy and I are both on the city ARPA committee, and so Peggy and I have been helping to shape some of the recommendations for how the city may intend to use their ARPA dollars. Specifically for the city, though, this is a Hampton Township project to be outside the city limits.
Do you have an idea? I know we got a waiting list. You've already got all the routes filled currently with the size of the facility you've got. Any idea like what the waiting list is right now? Do you have any idea?
It's like 2 or 3. Yeah, we had to close this week because of COVID. Most of the staff had COVID. One of the biggest issues right now is COVID and having to start and stop all the time if you have staffing issues because of COVID. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion to receive?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much
Great, thank
for the
you.
update and the presentation. Okay. Moving on to item B, the Pinconning Area School Resource Officer for Linwood Elementary School.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? Mr. Coonan?
Yeah, in reading, Troy, in reading some of the background information, the school district agrees to pay $8,000 as a full payment for the continuance. How often is the officer in the schools?
They're running, it's for Linwood, it's just a couple hours in the morning, and I think we set that up just because it's so close to the end of the school year. It's like for 4 months, so they're just trying to cover that time period.
And this is a continuance, huh?
Yeah, they're starting it up that way. I mean, they're just finishing up with the school year, but they had a contract. This is for the Linwood campus that they have, and they just want cars in the morning for, a couple hours, and then the school gets out.
All right, so next year it'll be for the full year.
Correct.
And it'll be whatever the going rate is for an officer in one of our schools.
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, they're still doing a little bit scaled back since elementary form, but yeah, set it that way.
All right. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number B3, the replacement of the patrol car. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Commissioner Cox, did we miss 2?
B2,
Marine Patrol.
What did I miss?
B2?
Marine Patrol Safety Program.
Oh, well, keep up, friends. Sorry about that. Is there a motion for, okay.
Support.
Anybody want to talk about it? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, how about moving back up to B4, vehicle purchased by Pinconning Township? Support? Who supported that? Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item C, is there a motion to approve the contract with the
So
Boys
moved.
and Girls Club?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item D, is there a motion for acceptance of the
So
grant
moved.
reward? Support. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E1, is there a motion for approval of a tire shredder agreement?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion for approval of insecticides?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion for approval of the purchase of the light trap contract?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on to item F1. Is there a motion for approval of the purchase of the Memorial
So
Day
moved.
flags?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Krieger?
So will this follow what we did a year ago with all the discussion on where the funds were coming from and how it was going to be reimbursed? And it was just quite a fiasco last year. So this brings some resolve, correct?
Yes, so last year, when we talked about this, we couldn't utilize millage money for the purchase of flags, so to streamline that process, got the ask going this year to have the money come from general fund, put it into appropriate line item, and take the steps now to get the flags ordered and those types of things. So everything's a nice, smooth transition this year.
So this takes care of the discussions that were going on within your group, with Mr. Brigandy, everybody's
Yes.
under
Yes, sir.
control?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item F2, is there a motion?
So moved.
For the contract?
Support.
Okay. Mr. Coonan?
Yeah, Craig, next year, this probably should be budgeted. You know, that's part of O&M, I would think, right?
We have, so far historically, we've been able to just take care of this in-house.
Yeah.
This year, for whatever reason, it has just been,
But if you don't need it, you don't spend it, but it probably should be budgeted.
sure,
That makes sense to me.
sure.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item G, is there a motion for tuition reimbursement?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item H, update on the Linwood Scenic Exercise Project.
moved.
To receive, is Laura going to do anything? No? Okay. Okay.
I don't have a question, I just reading it, Laura, you're doing a great job.
Bang-up
And,
job.
keep up that work because that helps throughout the whole community.
So Kim, you
Moved it.
moved it. Who supported it?
2 people.
Okay. Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Motion for approval of payables, BAYANET.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to receive the general fund equity? Support. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to receive Executive Directive 2007-11?
Support.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the Office Depot contract
So moved.
extension?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the Staples account contract?
Support?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, motion for approval of the agreement with Kroll for the endpoint detection response software.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion for approval of the two-factor authentication licenses?
So,
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 8, is there a motion for approval of the endpoint software original agreement?
so,
Support?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And item K, is there a motion for?
So moved.
support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now that we're down to item 8, are there any referrals? Unfinished business? New business? Ms. Johnson, is there a need to go to closed session?
There is not, Madam Chair.
Okay. Miscellaneous? Mr. Cronin?
Yeah, I've got a question on whereabouts are we in regards to the request for proposal for the broadband study?
Is Kristen?
Yes. I can answer that for you. We have set up a number of meetings to talk about what a scope of work would look like. And once we kind of put something together for that, we will get back to you. But we do have some meetings set and we've been discussing it.
What board? What board would it look like?
I'm sorry, what the scope of work would look like for the
You said
RFP.
what the board would look like. Scope of work, is it, I mean, maybe you can respond again. I misinterpreted what you said.
Okay, sorry, I'll slow down. Myself and a few other staff members have been meeting to discuss what the scope of work for that RFP would look like. And we have a meeting set coming up here yet this week. And so we are working on it and we are working to create that scope of work. And as soon as we have that together, we'll have more to report back.
It's not in my district, but I would think this would be something we'd want to get going soon because that money's coming from the federal government. And if we're not ready, we're going to get bypassed. So I think we need to get that. That's priority. So.
Yes, I agree. And we've met already once and we have another meeting on Thursday. So we are doing it as expeditiously as possible.
Aren't there companies out there that do that for a living?
Yeah, but
There are,
to do the request for bid, we have to give them, I think, some idea of what we're looking for. And that's what they've reached out to some of our neighbors, some other folks that have done this to try to narrow that down. But I agree with you 100%. We have to keep moving because we want to be first in line. Any other questions relative to that? Okay, any announcements? Vaughn?
Nothing right now.
Wow.
Quiet time of year.
You trying to keep everyone on their toes by not announcing this time? Okay, well, if there's nothing, is there a motion?
Oh, GA is still selling tickets, right at the races.
Way to save them.
Yep, still out there, $50 a ticket. If you actually want anything, let me know, I can hook you up. They take Venmo, MasterCard, whatever you need.
As they should.
As they should.
As they
almost
should.
everyone does at this time.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Who's in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, our work is done.